I don't think there was one moment when everything just snapped. It wasn't like Sierra woke up one morning, stretched, and decided, "Today, I'm going to declare war on my marriage." No. It was slower than that, like a leak you don't notice until you're ankle-deep in cold, grimy water. We were in the living room. Well, she was. I was standing in the doorway, still dressed from work, laptop bag over my shoulder, car keys biting into my palm. I asked a simple question, something harmless. "Hey, you want to hang out later? Maybe pick up that show we started?" She didn't even blink, didn't look up, didn't acknowledge me. She just kept scrolling on her phone like I was a static hum in the background. Then she said it, "I'm not your toy." 4 words, so sharp they could have sliced the air between us. She said it with this ice-edged calm, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. There wasn't anger in her voice, not even annoyance, just cold finality. I blinked once, thinking maybe I misheard her, but she tossed her phone onto the couch like the conversation bored her already and leaned back. "I'm not here to entertain you, Colton," she added. "I'm not here to be on just because you need attention." That one hit deeper than I wanted to admit. I hadn't asked for a circus performance. Hell, I hadn't even touched her in over a week. All I wanted was a moment, some tiny thread of connection, something that felt like the US we used to be. But Sierra? She was already back to scrolling her phone. Conversation over. End of transmission. I probably said something pathetic after that. Something dumb, like a half-hearted joke to lighten the mood. "Well, guess I'll just go entertain myself with leftover pizza and existential dread," I muttered, forcing a smile. Nothing, not even a chuckle. She barely glanced at me before unlocking her phone again, scrolling with her thumb like I was a fly buzzing against the window. I stood there for another beat, the weight of my laptop bag getting heavier by the second, before I finally gave up and trudged into the kitchen. At least the fridge never gave me attitude. As I pulled out a beer, I told myself, she's just stressed. It's work, it's hormones, it's Mercury in retrograde. You know, whatever desperate excuse I could slap over the widening cracks. But deep down, I knew better. Hell, I had known for months, maybe longer. It was in the way she started locking her phone, even around me, like I was some nosy little brother trying to sneak a peek. It was the new going out outfits, short skirts, plunging tops, outfits I hadn't seen since we were dating. And at home, baggy sweats and old college hoodies, like I didn't even rate a real outfit anymore. The intimacy? It went from spontaneous kisses to a rigid, scheduled routine of physical intimacy. And then, nothing. Just an endless string of "I'm tired," or "maybe tomorrow," or "I just feel off lately." At first, I bought it. I mean, who wouldn't? 9 years together. Careers, bills, responsibilities. It wears you down. "It's just a phase," I kept telling myself. "We'll work through it. We always do." Sierra wasn't working through anything. She was busy working around me. It wasn't just the distance, it was the disdain. Every time I suggested something, a weekend trip, a date night, even fixing the goddamn sink, it was met with sarcasm. "Oh sure, because a 3-hour drive to a cabin in the woods will fix 9 years of systemic issues," she'd say, her voice dripping with condescension. Once, when I asked if she wanted to help me pick a new couch, she rolled her eyes so hard I thought she might actually sprain something. "Colton, you pick whatever beige monstrosity makes you feel like a real man. I'm sure it'll match the emotional desert you're cultivating." Cute, right? And me? Like an idiot, I kept trying. Romantic gestures, little notes on her pillow. I even learned how to cook a halfway decent risotto one night, because God forbid we have another frozen pizza dinner. You want to know how that went? I found the note I left for her, a little handwritten "I love you always" card, crumpled under her nightstand a week later, wedged between an empty La Croix can and a half-eaten protein bar. No mention of it, no smile, not even a thanks, just trash, like me. One night, after another silent dinner where the loudest thing between us was the clink of silverware, I finally broke. I drove to my brother's place. No text, no call ahead, Just showed up like some sad stray dog with a six-pack of cheap beer and a look that said, "Don't ask." Jared opened the door, took one look at me, and stepped aside without a word. He knew. Big brothers always know. We sat on his back porch, cheap string lights flickering above us, mosquitoes plotting their attacks. After about 2 beers, he asked, "So, when's the last time you two just, talked?" I stared into my bottle like it was gonna have the answer printed inside. "Really talked, Colton," Jared pressed, his voice soft. I thought back to the night Sierra used to curl up next to me, telling me about her wild ideas, her petty office dramas, her impossible dreams about opening a bakery one day even though she couldn't bake for shit. Now I barely knew what music she liked anymore, let alone what she dreamed about. I don't know," I finally said. Jared nodded slowly, like he was watching someone bleed out but couldn't stop it. "We used to talk about everything. I used to know what made her laugh so hard she'd snort. Now, when I asked, 'How was your day?' she gave me a shrug so lifeless it could have been automated. Half the time, she didn't even bother pretending. Sometimes I'd catch myself doing something stupid, like buying her favorite coffee creamer, just to see if she'd even notice. She didn't. Hell, I could have replaced myself with a decorative pillow and it would have gotten more attention. When I got home that night, Sierra was on the couch, scrolling through her phone, legs curled up like a cat who didn't need anyone but her own damn tail. I dropped my keys on the counter, loud enough to be heard. Nothing. I kicked off my shoes, deliberately, clumsily. Nothing. Finally, I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, and just watched her. She didn't even flinch, didn't look up, didn't say a word. I realized then I was living with a ghost. Only problem was I was the one haunting her. And here's the real kicker. I still loved her. Stubbornly, pathetically, even while she treated me like wallpaper, even when she talked about finding her voice, as if loving her for 9 years somehow meant I'd silenced it. Even when she looked at me like I was a reminder of everything she didn't want to be anymore. That night, lying in bed next to a woman who once couldn't fall asleep without touching me, I stared at the ceiling and thought, if I'm the villain in her story, why am I the only one who stayed? It didn't happen all at once. There was no big speech, no dramatic exit, no storming out with bags and accusations. I didn't even raise my voice. I just stopped. Stopped reminding her about garbage pickup. Stopped folding her laundry and putting it neatly on her side of the bed. Stopped making 2 cups of coffee in the morning. Hell, I even started drinking tea just to avoid the ritual entirely. I stopped asking what she wanted for dinner. Stopped asking if she wanted dinner at all. If I cooked, it was for one. I stopped making sure her car's registration was renewed. Stopped paying for her digital subscriptions. Stopped fixing things around the house that mysteriously broke once she touched them. It wasn't some master plan. It wasn't revenge. It was a natural reflex. The emotional version of pulling your hand away after you've been burned enough times. She said she wanted space. She said she wanted independence. So I gave her exactly what she asked for. At first, she didn't notice. Or maybe she did, but thought it was a gift, like she had finally trained me to stay out of her way. She walked around the house like someone who just got off a TED Talk titled, "Reclaiming Your Power, How to Ghost Your Husband Without Actually Moving Out." She wore outfits I hadn't seen since our early dating days, tight, revealing, curated for attention. But they weren't for me. Oh no, I could have stood in front of her in a tuxedo holding a rose, and she still would have looked right through me like a frosted window. These outfits were for the mirror, and maybe for someone else, someone on the other side of a screen. She was always glued to her phone, scrolling, typing, smiling, but never at me. I didn't ask questions, didn't accuse, didn't demand answers. I just let her be. I started hitting the gym after work. I'd stay out later than usual. Sometimes I didn't come home until 9. I started sleeping in the guest room, at first because I didn't want to disturb her, but honestly, because lying next to her felt like sleeping next to a stranger with a grudge. Then came the first crack in her fantasy. It was a Thursday, rainy, cold. She texted me, "Car won't start. Come help me." I was in the shower. I saw the text, read it. Twice. Then I dried off, got dressed, made a sandwich, and did absolutely nothing. When I walked in an hour later, she was sitting at the dining table, arms crossed, drenched hair frizzed, hoodie damp, mascara barely holding on. "You saw my message," she said, flat as a pancake. I nodded. "Yep." She stared at me, waiting. I took a bite of my sandwich, chewed slowly, swallowed. "You said you wanted to do things yourself." Her nostrils flared. She looked down at her phone and started scrolling, the universal sign for conversation over, but her hands were shaking. The next day she called a locksmith because she had locked herself out while I was at work, paid $180. I found the crumpled receipt in the trash like it personally offended her. Then came the groceries. She forgot to buy dog food. Our dog went 2 days eating dry cereal and weird fridge scraps before I finally restocked. And I made damn sure to only buy his food. Nothing for her. The dishes piled up, the sink clogged, that quiet humming sound in the garbage disposal. Yeah, it became a grinding shriek that could have summoned demons. That's when it hit me. Sierra had no idea how things worked around here. Not the bills, not the repairs, not even who to call when something broke. She was used to living in a house that magically maintained itself because I was the one silently pulling the strings behind the scenes. And now that I stopped, she was flailing. Not because I was punishing her, not because I wanted her to struggle, but because, for the first time, she had to face the reality she never saw. The whole independent woman act only worked because I was behind the curtain holding it all together. Now that I wasn't, it all started to fall apart. A few days later, I saw the message. She left her phone face up on the coffee table while she went to the bathroom. A rare moment of carelessness, considering she usually kept it guarded like a damn nuclear briefcase. While she was in the bathroom, a text popped up on her phone, Sierra to Fiona. "He's so cold, doesn't even care that I'm struggling. I think he's trying to punish me." Punish her? Right. Because I was the one who turned our bedroom into a Cold War zone. Because I was the one who started treating affection like a currency exchange. And sure, I stopped doing the things she never thanked me for. But punishment? No. This wasn't revenge. This was retreat. She had pushed me out and expected me to keep orbiting her like some obedient little moon, content just to be near her light. She mistook my devotion for dependence. Now that I wasn't orbiting, she was panicking. That same night, the bathroom sink overflowed. I heard her stomping around upstairs, dropping something, cursing under her breath. I didn't move. I stayed on the couch, headphones in, watching a documentary about whales. Peaceful creatures, by the way, the kind that don't send passive-aggressive texts to Fiona. 10 minutes later, she came downstairs, arms crossed, face twisted in annoyance. "The sink is clogged again," she said, tone already blaming me somehow. I paused the video. That sucks," I replied, not looking up. She waited. "Aren't you going to fix it?" "Nope." Her jaw dropped like I'd just told her the dog joined a cult. "Seriously?" "Dead serious," I said, popping a peanut in my mouth. "YouTube's full of tutorials. Plumbing is very empowering." She stormed off. The sink remained clogged for 3 days. Then came the shift. She started cooking again. 2 nights in a row. Real food. Not just avocado toast and judgment. She cleaned the kitchen, lit a candle, even put on some background music. Soft jazz. The kind she used to mock me for. I walked in late after the gym, sweaty and drained, and found her standing by the sink like she was posing for a magazine spread titled, "Regret, but make it domestic." "I made roasted chicken and veggies," she said casually, like this wasn't the first meal she'd cooked in weeks. "Smells good," I said, heading straight to the fridge for water. I grabbed my plate, walked to the living room, and started eating with the TV on. She followed, stood in the doorway. "You're really not going to talk to me?" I looked up from my food. "What do you want me to say?" "I don't know. Anything?" I gave her a long look. Not angry, not bitter, just tired. "You told me you weren't my toy, that you didn't owe me anything, so I stopped expecting anything from you. Figured you wanted your space." She blinked, and for the first time in what felt like years, I saw it. Regret. Tiny. Flickering, like a match that wasn't sure it wanted to burn. After that night, the dinner, the doorway, the awkward conversation, I figured Sierra would keep her distance. Maybe cool off. Maybe blame it all on me like she usually did. But nope. She changed tactics. Suddenly, she was all sunshine and fake sweetness. The kind of sweetness that gives you a cavity if you stand too close. She started smiling again, wearing real clothes instead of yoga pants she hadn't washed since Tuesday. Spritzing on the perfume I gave her 2 anniversaries ago, the same one she once said made her feel like a PTA mom. She even laughed at one of my lame jokes during breakfast. Laughed. The same woman who could barely make eye contact 2 weeks ago. At first, I wanted to believe it. I really did. Maybe the silence worked. Maybe she realized what she was throwing away. Maybe she missed me. Missed us. But something about it felt staged, like a dress rehearsal for a play she didn't want to actually perform. She was doing all the right things, but she was doing them like someone following a checklist. Smile. Compliment him. Wear a top that shows a little shoulder, and then came the phone, her favorite accessory. She started guarding it again, tighter than a dragon with a pile of gold. Locked screen, face down on every surface, disappearing upstairs whenever it buzzed. I noticed it, of course. How could I not? Once you live with someone long enough, you notice the little things, especially when the little things scream guilty. It all came to a head one Tuesday night. I was sitting on the couch, flipping through Netflix like a zombie, pretending to care about whether I wanted action, comedy, or existential dread. The Bluetooth speaker in the living room was quietly playing one of my jazz playlists. Something mellow. Something that made the silence between us feel a little less painful. Sierra was pacing near the front door, phone in hand, clearly texting someone. "Wi-Fi's acting weird," she muttered, barely glancing at me. She disappeared outside, probably trying to get better signal. And that's when it happened. The music on the Bluetooth speaker cut out. A soft click. Then, her phone connected to the speaker instead. She had paired it weeks ago to play music during one of her cleaning moods and forgotten to unpair it. And now? Now her private call was blasting through the living room, at first just static. Then a voice. A man's voice. Warm, smooth, confident. "You know you don't have to keep pretending, right? If you're not happy, you don't have to stay just because it's comfortable." I froze, remote still in my hand. Breath caught somewhere between my chest and my stomach. Then came her voice. "Sierra." She giggled, not the awkward, polite laugh she saved for me. The real laugh, the one I hadn't heard in months. "I'm not pretending," she said, voice low and flirty. "I'm just playing it smart. He's finally backing off. I just need a little more time." I didn't move, didn't react. I just sat there, staring at the wall, listening to the woman I married talk about me like I was some obstacle she was slowly, strategically dismantling. A second later, the call abruptly cut. Silence. Guess she finally realized her phone had hijacked the speaker. She came back inside 2 minutes later, acting like nothing happened. Casual, breezy, fake. "Wi-Fi's still terrible," she said, shrugging as she passed by me toward the kitchen. I didn't even look at her. I didn't say a word. Because at that moment, something inside me, something I hadn't even realized was still holding on, snapped. I didn't need to ask questions anymore. I didn't need to accuse or beg or fix. All I needed now was a plan. That night, after Sierra floated through the house pretending the Wi-Fi was still our biggest problem, I stayed sitting on the couch. Long after the TV dimmed itself into screensaver mode, long after the world outside went dark and still, I sat there, replaying that voice in my head. It gnawed at me. A name was right there, just out of reach. It hit me about an hour later. Landon. The life coach Sierra had raved about months ago. The one she found through some online course called Unlock Your Potential, Mind, body, soul, and probably your wallet too. Landon, the guy who helped her with her personal development journey. The guy who apparently wasn't just giving her motivational quotes and bad podcast recommendations. I remembered meeting him once, maybe twice. Expensive casual wear that screamed, "I have a six-pack and a fragile ego." Smelled like sage and overpriced beard oil. At the time, I thought he was just another expensive self-help salesman. Harmless. Shows you what I know. But I didn't react that night. Didn't confront her. Didn't storm around demanding answers. No. I started preparing. First thing, back up everything. Sierra had forgotten long ago that when we first set up her tablet, during one of her "I'm gonna be an influencer" phases, I connected it to our shared cloud account. She never bothered to log out. It sat gathering dust in the guest room. While she was busy scrolling TikTok on her phone, the tablet quietly synced everything. Texts, photos, messages. The messages started innocently enough. Pep talks, compliments. "You're amazing, Sierra. You deserve to feel seen. Don't let anyone dim your light." You know, classic emotional vampire stuff. But slowly, drip by drip, they changed, got more personal, and then downright flirtatious. Photos, inside jokes, private little secrets I hadn't been part of for months. Worse than the flirting, though, was the rewriting of our marriage. Every small fight we had, Landon turned into proof that I was controlling. Every moment of distance, he spun into evidence that she was trapped. He played therapist, savior, and knight. The real kicker? Their emotional affair turned into something a lot less emotional about 3 weeks ago. If the texts and the not-so-subtle selfies were anything to go by, I sat there reading it all, not enraged. And through it all, one truth burned itself into my mind. I had been funding this. Every coaching session, every self-improvement seminar, every spiritual retreat where she found herself a little closer to his bed. My money, my home, my loyalty. But I didn't storm into the kitchen screaming. I didn't pull a Lifetime movie meltdown. Instead, I got quiet, colder than she ever thought I could be, and she hadn't even begun to feel it yet. After reading those messages, something inside me finally snapped, not with rage, but with a kind of cold clarity. I didn't scream. I didn't confront her. I didn't even bother playing the betrayed husband card. I just withdrew. No more small talk, no more casual affection, no more pretending we were still a team. I moved around the house like a ghost. Polite, distant, completely unreachable. If I cooked, it was for me. If I cleaned, it was my mess. Her world shrank without my invisible support, and she noticed. At first, Sierra tried to play it cool. A few forced smiles, some awkward attempts at old times, cooking my favorite meals, putting on the perfume she used to wear when she still cared. It was all hollow, like someone trying to sell a memory they didn't believe in anymore. I didn't bite. Short answers, flat expressions, cold silence. It didn't take long for her frustration to boil over. "You're being distant," she snapped one night. "You're punishing me." I shrugged. "I'm giving you what you asked for." No shouting, no drama. Just the truth she wasn't ready to hear. Meanwhile, Landon, her self-help hero, started disappearing too. Texts became brief, careless. The man who once showered her with validation now barely bothered to reply. I saw it all happening, her panic growing, her desperate attempts to pull me back in, to recreate a connection she had already burned to the ground. But me? I was already gone. By the end of the second week, the cracks were impossible for Sierra to hide. The fake smiles turned into anxious glances. The casual touches became desperate attempts to pull me into conversations I didn't want to have. "Maybe we should take a trip," she suggested one evening, her voice too bright, too rehearsed. "Just a weekend, to reconnect." Reconnect? I wanted to laugh. What was left to reconnect? But I played along. "Sure," I said with a smile so empty it should have come with a warning label. I let her plan the whole thing. Found her digging out suitcases from the closet, humming to herself like the old Sierra I hadn't seen in years. Hope. She thought she was fixing it. She thought a cozy Airbnb and a couple of overpriced dinners would erase months, no years, of decay. The night before we were supposed to leave, she packed her bag carefully, chatting about scenic drives and cozy fireplaces. I packed something too. Not clothes, papers. A neatly printed separation agreement, already signed on my end. Fair, quiet, final. 2 hours before our scheduled departure, I walked into the living room where she was zipping up her bag. She smiled at me, excited, relieved, like we were actually going to hit some imaginary reset button. I handed her an envelope. She looked at it, confused. "What's this?" "Open it," I said simply. She did. I watched the smile slide off her face like wet paint. "Colton, wait," she started, voice shaking. "No," I interrupted calmly. "You wanted freedom. Here it is." For once, she didn't know what to say. No excuses, no tears, just shock. The silence between us said everything. I grabbed my keys, slung my bag over my shoulder, and walked out the door. I spent that weekend at my brother's place, fishing off his dock, drinking cold beer, watching the sky fade from orange to violet without a single ounce of noise in my chest. For the first time in what felt like years, I could actually breathe. No forced conversations, no pretending, just silence. And it was beautiful. When I came back Sunday night, the house was spotless. Sierra was sitting at the kitchen island, dressed in jeans and a plain t-shirt, no makeup, no perfume. The separation papers sat neatly on the counter, her signature scrawled across the bottom. Her wedding ring rested on top, still warm, like it had only just left her hand. She stood up when I walked in. "Colton," she started, her voice raw, stripped of all the performance. I looked at her, really looked. Not as the woman I married, not as the girl who once used to fall asleep on my chest, but as a stranger who had carefully, methodically made herself one. "I don't want this," she whispered. I nodded. "You wanted freedom," I said. "Now you have it." She swallowed hard. "Not like this." A sad smile tugged at the corner of my mouth. "You don't get to choose what it looks like." She opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, explain, twist it into something else, but the words never came. Instead, she just stood there, arms limp at her sides, staring at a version of me she couldn't reach anymore. And then, almost too softly to hear, she said it. "I made a mistake. It should have felt satisfying. It should have felt like winning. It didn't. It felt empty. Because by the time the apology came, there was nothing left to save." I nodded once, picked up my bag, walked upstairs without looking back. 2 days later, when I came home from work, she was gone. No note, no goodbye, just half an empty closet, a few half-used perfume bottles in the bathroom, and the faintest echo of everything we used to be. I didn't call her. I didn't ask where she went. I just let the house get quieter. A few months passed. The house settled into a new kind of silence. Not heavy, not suffocating, but clean, peaceful. I filled my days with old hobbies I'd almost forgotten. Photography, hiking, late-night drives with no destination. I started meeting friends again, having real conversations, laughing. Not because I was trying to prove something, not because I needed to move on, but because for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't pretending. As for Sierra, the last I heard, Landon didn't stick around for the fairy tale either. A mutual friend told me he reconnected with an old girlfriend, the kind of woman who didn't need pep talks or validation seminars to feel alive. Apparently, when Sierra became inconvenient, too real, too complicated, he dropped her like a bad habit. We didn't talk after she left. A few texts trickled in early on. "Hope you're doing okay. Let me know if you need anything signed for the bank. I miss our routines." I answered once, "Take care of yourself." That was it. No warmth, no anger, just the clean break she had earned. Months later, we crossed paths. Grocery store, wine aisle. I was reaching for a bottle when I heard her voice. Colton? I turned. There she was, holding a bottle of red she used to love, looking smaller somehow. Tired. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You look good, she said, almost surprised. Thanks, I replied easily. A beat of silence stretched between us. Then, softer, I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. I shrugged. You said you weren't my toy, I said. So I stopped playing. She blinked, like she'd been carrying the weight of those words in her chest since the day I walked out. I turned and walked away, feeling lighter than I had in years, and for the first time, I didn't look back.